Good evening, everybody. Today I'm going to be giving you guys an update on the RWBY Grimm art contest. You guys can see they have put a link to an official statement, and we also are down to 3 Grimm. So I'm going to be reading Rooster Teeth's statement. I'm also going to be explaining why we are down to 3 Grimm, and just generally talking about what they have talked about in this statement here today. I'm not going to be reading everything word for word because there's a lot of just flowy language, I guess, in here that doesn't really matter. But first, they thank everyone for participating. Obviously, they talk about the harassment, and they felt that the voting and response to contestants online violated code of conduct we uphold for our community and staff. And they say that for this reason, we closed voting and instead will select a winner via a panel of judges from the show. We are also re-evaluating how to structure future contests to foster positive interaction while engaging artists and our community. So that's the first part. Through community feedback we received, we now recognize there's cultural sensitivity around one of the finalist designs. We apologize for not being cognizant and responsive to this potential concern earlier. And then they basically go on to say that they have disqualified. Like, they say, we have made the decision not to incorporate designs of that character in a RWBY, but basically the artist has been disqualified. That is why they are no longer on this page. So that is basically that. They basically took down the voting because of what's been going on. They're reevaluating the structure, and they have disqualified that artist. Now, you guys may be wondering what happened to the person that made the other design that is missing, and they voluntarily resigned, I guess you could say. They disqualified themselves, in a sense. I think that that is what's happening here. They voluntarily withdrew. I think that is a better way to say it. So I want to give my thoughts on this sort of piece by piece. And I think the first thing that we need to talk about is I understand why the design that is now called the Hollow, right, had to be removed in order to make it fair. Because the reality is that while all this was going on, these 3 designs really suffered. And so I'm glad that it has been sort of given an opportunity, right, to be fair for the 3 artists that were effectively punished because all the nonsense that was going on, you know? But I do think that there is something to say about how it is unfair that this artist changed, that they were educated, that they apologized, that they willingly changed the name and design elements, and that they all did this of their own volition, I guess you could say. They weren't forced to do it. They did that because they're a good person, at least in this instance. I don't know them personally, but I would say that those are all the qualities of a good person, someone who's willing to take accountability for their actions and attempt to fix it, and they are now being punished by being disqualified. I think that that really sucks. I understand why they need to do it, because ultimately, they need to make it fair for these 3 artists, and so I get it. It just sucks, and it sucks because this was entirely preventable if they had just taken down the poll days earlier. And I know that they're like, we're sorry for not being responsive to this earlier. Like, they left these artists out to dry for days, guys. That's what you guys need to understand, is that I don't know, like, the logistics of it. I don't know if maybe there was some, I don't want to say argument, but there was some difficulty getting Full Sail on board with this, but they could have taken down the poll days ago, immediately. It would have literally been like clicks of a button, change the art, put it back up, be like, hey, sorry guys, put out a statement about that. The artist has, changed these aspects of their design that were problematic. They've apologized, they've done this, this, and this, so we've restarted the voting. Now we're giving everyone a fair chance. And that would have nipped it in the bud from the very beginning. And that way the artist wouldn't have been punished, right? Because they were willing to change the name days ago, right? It's only snowballed like this because Rooster Teeth and Full Sail let it snowball like this, in my opinion, right? And so if they had just, taken down the poll and done that, everything would have been okay. But now this artist gets disqualified for something that is not their fault because they couldn't go in and change their submission to the Gleam poll. That is Rooster Teeth and that is Full Sail dropping the ball on this because they had their changed concept art, or at least the idea of changing the name. I don't know how recent the concept art is. I think they came out with that a couple days ago, but they were ready to change the name basically like immediately in terms of the timeline of this, right? Like within like 2 days, they were like, okay, let's let's vote on a new name. If it wins, this will be the new name, all of that sort of stuff, right? And I don't see that as running away. I see that as taking accountability and working with the community to find a solution that is not offensive, right? So that just really sucks that that artist has been disqualified. As for the artist that withdrew, that it was right of them to resign. The other artist, the one that made the rhino-looking one, because they did some things that were not very good sportsmanship on their Twitter account. So I think ultimately it was good for that artist to voluntarily withdraw from the contest. I think that that was a good move overall, because I don't think that that kind of I don't want to say attitude, but that kind of thing breaks the integrity of the contest. And that's something that I said in this post, if you guys want to go see my post on the whole thing. But I think something they need to consider for structure changes is that the artist should be anonymous. This prevents them from getting hate, so nobody knows who the artist is, and so if there is an issue, right, people can't just go and harass them because they don't know the name of the artist or their Twitter handle. Like, it was so accessible to go attack these people, right? And so I suggested, like, hey, maybe next time make all the artists anonymous for the duration of the contest, and then after the contest is over, give each one of them a shout out on the RWBY Twitter account so they all get credit and they all get exposure, and they'd probably get more exposure on the RWBY Twitter account than they would from the Full Sail page, if that makes sense. So that makes sense to me, to make everything anonymous, not just to prevent the harassment, but then to also prevent this, like, oh, vote for my friend made this Grimm, right? Because that ruins the integrity of the contest. Then it's about who the artist is, not what they designed, and that's not the point. Right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think structure-wise, they should do the same thing as FanForge. If you guys don't know, FanForge has done RWBY merch. They are doing Camp merch. And what they do is, like, people submit their art and their designs, and then the community votes. So the community votes on everything. And then the judges pick what gets turned into merch. That makes a lot more sense to me than Rooster Teeth doing this backwards, where RWBY picked first, and then it was up to us to vote, because I guess RWBY picking first was like, we'd be okay with any of these Grimm being put in the show, so let's just leave it up to them, whatever. But something like that would be able to control, like, RWBY picking what they want, at their discretion, if that makes sense. So I feel like they should use the FanForge method. Instead, they have, like, an inverted FanForge method, which doesn't make any sense. I think that getting a panel of judges now, like, is a good solution. Like, really, the voting had to go out the window at this point. So I feel like that part is definitely fine. I think the last thing I said in my post was just how slow they acted. Like, this entire thing could have been resolved relatively quickly if they had just taken action earlier before this snowballed out of control. Ultimately, guys, I'm glad that things will be fair for these 3 artists that are left. They just kind of got caught in the middle of controversy. I think that what the results were before all this happened were really indicative of what the community wanted, so I hope that RWBY kind of considers that. The hag was in first before all this bullshit started happening, so, I mean, like, obviously they're gonna do whatever works best in the show. You know, like, I don't want to say that they should pick the hag just because we voted for that, but I hope that should be taken into consideration, that the purest time the votes were shown, if that makes sense. Like, the purest time period in the voting, the hag was first. I really like the sulfur fish. I talked about this. It really speaks to me as, like, a vacuo Grimm, and so it would be kind of cool if, like, as a, you know, hey, you 3 got, like, caught, like, in the middle of all this nonsense, like, why don't we put all your Grimms in the show? The sulfur fish can be a vacuo Grimm. This one can sort of be, like, the Beowulfs and more of, like, a, I don't want to say a fodder Grimm, because that makes it sound, like, less cool, but, you know, like a many, like, you have many of those Grimm, and then this could be, like, a big bad boy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that would make a lot of sense, and that would be like, hey, you guys all win in some capacity. Like, let's put the sulfur fish in vacuo, because they do speak to me as a very, like, vacuo type creature. I don't know if that's just me. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that. make sure that if you guys have any feedback for Rooster Teeth here, you guys reply to the post. I think that is the best way to sort of reach someone. You're not really gonna reach anybody through Twitter, but at least we know that there's some person that works at Rooster Teeth posting this stuff and moderating the thread. So if you have any constructive feedback for them, I would suggest going through this channel and making a comment similar to how I did. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.